So in a few days, Colombia will have a new president take office. And look, I'm not here to talk politics. I live here, I have opinions, but that's not what this video is about. What this video is about is something that came out during the election coverage that I thought didn't get enough attention. Everyone was focused on the margin, which was insane, less than 1%. This country almost went in a different direction, and in the middle of all that noise, one detail caught my eye. The new president of Colombia holds 3 passports: Colombian, Italian, American. And when I saw that, I thought, that's more than just an interesting fact, because each one of these passports came about in a completely different way, and together they map almost perfectly onto the only 3 ways a person on Earth can build that kind of optionality. So what are we doing today? We're using the President of Colombia as a syllabus. Let me give you some context first. Abelardo de la Espriella, new president of Colombia, won by less than 1% of the vote, and I can tell you from firsthand experience the country was on a knife's edge. Now think about what that means going into an election where he was the underdog, and this brand new political career would have been brand newly over if the country goes in a different direction. If everything changes overnight, what's his plan B? Now we're obviously talking about a very powerful, wealthy person. But this doesn't just go for politicians, and it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. It goes for anyone who might be wanting to build some options into their future when you are contained in the borders of one country, dependent on things out of your control. Most people in that situation are just hoping for the best. Some people put action in place to take back the control. This guy had Plan B and Plan C. His wife reportedly said during the campaign, if he loses, they might move to Italy because he has an Italian passport. And he naturalized as an American citizen in February of 2023, 2 years before he even ran. So while everyone was watching the vote count, he had 3 sovereign options in his pocket. We've seen it over and over again. We don't know what tomorrow brings. Maybe you never use it. Maybe you do. You don't wear your seatbelt expecting the car to crash. The 3 different passports represent 3 pathways which you might have. You just might not have thought about them. So let's go through them. Passport 1, the one you were born with. You were born somewhere, the country said come pick up your passport. You never thought much of it because that's obvious. But here's a surprising stat. Less than half of Americans even have a valid passport. Less than half. The most powerful country in the world. And more than half its citizens have never left it on their own document. Of the half that do, virtually none have a second one. Now, the American passport is strong, visa-free access to 186 countries. That's impressive, but it's a single point of failure. One document, one government, one set of policies you can't control. And look, I'm not here to be apocalyptic about America. I'm from Texas. I love Texas. But I live in Colombia now, and I can tell you the perspective changes when you're outside looking in. Things that felt permanent start to feel contingent. Policies change, administrations change, the world changes. The question isn't whether you trust your government today. The question is whether you want your entire life's mobility based on a single government, ever. Most people stop at 0. A little less than half stop at 1. Let's talk about why you shouldn't. Passport 2, the one you might already have. This won't apply to all of you, but this applies to some of you, and if it does, it's very important because this window is closing fast. Today, that you might have never thought about because maybe no one ever told you to think about it. It's called jure sanguinis, Latin for right of blood. And the idea is simple. If your parents or grandparents were citizens of a certain country, you may already have legal claim to citizenship there. And you don't even have to live abroad. You can fill out the paperwork now. De la Espriella got his Italian passport this way. His maternal grandparents were Italian citizens. That bloodline entitled him decades later to do the paperwork, go to the consulate, and pick up what was already legally his according to the Italian government. Italy's the most famous example of this, and for decades it was extremely generous. If you could trace an unbroken line back to an Italian ancestor alive after 1861, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, you could apply. Tens of thousands of Americans have done exactly this. People who grew up hearing stories about their Nona going through Ellis Island. who decided to look into it, who spent a few months gathering documents, and who ended up with one of the strongest passports in the world. And then Italy changed its rules. In March of 2025, Italy passed a law cutting the program back to only 2 generations. Only those with an Italian parent or grandparent, not great-grandparent, now qualify under the standard route. The Italian Constitutional Court confirmed the change in 2026. It is not being reversed. So if your great-grandparents were Italian, the window's closed. I'm sorry, it's gone. But if you have an Italian grandparent, you may still qualify. And I cannot stress this enough. Start the process now. Like, stop the video and start the process. Not when you get around to it. The window's not getting wider. Here's what to do. If you don't know, do some genealogical research. Ancestry.com, 23andMe, locate birth records. Since it's a grandparent, you should know, but there are people who don't. Find an Italian immigration attorney. There are firms that specialize specifically in jure sanguinis claims. The paperwork is actually not that hard once you know you're eligible. And here's a part that makes it even more compelling. Do it once and your kids get it automatically. You're not just getting a second passport, you're making a decision that echoes through generations to come. Ireland works similarly. Irish citizenship by descent is available through a parent or grandparent, but the rules have been tightening through 2025 and 2026. The program isn't closed, but it's not getting any more generous either. The pattern everywhere is the same. The windows open slow and close fast. The people who moved 5 years ago are sitting on EU passports right now. Travel, residency, healthcare through 27 countries. The people who waited are watching the door closing on the news. Look up your family tree. Do it this week. Call your grandmother. Call your grandmother anyways. Passport 3, the one you earn. De la Espriella's American passport came through naturalization. He chose it, went through the process. In February of 2023, 2 years before he ran for president, he took an oath and became a U.S. citizen. Think about that timing again. He wasn't American because he had to be. Put all that forward before he needed it. Naturalization is the slowest of the 3 pathways. Colombia requires 5 years of legal residency before you can apply. Most countries are somewhere within that range, some shorter, some longer. It's intentional, it takes time, but it is also the most universally accessible pathway. You don't need the right grandparents. You don't need to have been born somewhere specific. You just need to choose a country, establish legal residency, and start the clock. I live in Colombia on a digital nomad visa. This doesn't add to residency, but I'm on a different timeline. I will tell you that Colombia is one of the most accessible entry points for Americans thinking about this. Also, the pensioner visa and the investment visa are legal pathways to establishing residency, and the clock starts the moment you do. Or if you're Don Juan or Donna Juana, you can throw the dice and look for the marriage visa. Other countries worth looking at for naturalization. Panama, Portugal, Paraguay, all have relatively accessible paths and strong passports. Do your research, find the one that fits your life, and start the clock. The key insight here is the same one that runs through all pathways. The people who have options built them before the moment arrived. Not during the crisis, not when they needed them, before. Dante, who knew a thing or two about a journey to a place you'd rather not be, wrote this while in exile from the city he loved. To me, the whole world is a homeland, like a sea to the fish. He didn't write that from a place of peace. He wrote it after Florence kicked him out and told him never to come back. He made the whole world his home because he had no other choice. You have a choice, that's the point. Hopefully you always have a choice. The president of Colombia went into the most consequential night of his life, holding options most voters, most people anywhere, don't have. He had 2 exits built in, just in case. Options that are possible to many people, and you don't have to be wealthy or a politician or a president or a fancy lawyer or have a private jet and a Bugatti in South Beach. You can figure this out. Don't let it be something to sort out eventually, if things get serious, if it becomes necessary. The people who have them have built the option before the moment arrived. Laws change without warning. Windows close without announcement. The question isn't whether you'll ever need a second passport, it's whether you'll have one when your own particular need for optionality becomes obvious. And the point to take away here is Espriella is just an example of somebody famous right at this moment who's done these things that are possible for many of us to do. And to underline the fact that this is going away very soon, even if it's still technically possible, the bureaucracy will start choking it out. So get on it, or share this with someone you know who might have a Italian or Irish grandmother, and if tell them by sharing it, they have to take you on a trip there one day. If this video was useful, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you next week.